I think we're going. Good Friday morning, everyone, and welcome to the close of another business week in May. Tomorrow is Saturday morning cartoons, and Sunday is an official Christian holiday of Pentecost is coming up. Well, it may be an official Christian holiday, but it commemorates a very universal and not restricted to Christianity state of consciousness. Okay, and it's one of Constance's uh, favorite uh, concepts, shall we say? And Sunday we'll be hosting this morning talk together, so she can elaborate on her wonderful, unique, and inspiring point of view as far as what that could mean to all of us, magicians and non-magicians alike. And keeping in that ecclesiastical theme, I want to talk about Eucharists and the Eucharist as a magical ceremony. Not only a ceremony, but as a magical tool, as a magical concept. At the close of a specific initiation ritual that I don't need to identify by name, it's doesn't matter. But at the end of the ceremony, or at the climax of the ceremony, certain objects that have played a very important role in the ceremony, so important that they more or less represents the essence of the magical charge or the magical energy that is intended to be laid upon the candidate. Those objects, one by one, are thrown into a consuming fire at the end. And with the words consummatum est. And I've told the story many times of one of my first magical acts was the creation of 7 planetary talismans over a period of a year or so. And shortly after, or within a year after I created these priceless objects of magical art, it came into my mind to, hey, these are going to crumble in just a few years. The ink's going to fade. I'm going to lose some of them, and they'll never look as good as they do right now. They will never have more power than they do right now. And it's not in the object, it's in the essence. And so one by one, in a ceremonial manner, I burned them, just like consummatum est. Okay. So the Eucharist is a aspect of that dynamic, only it involves one's own already installed physical, fleshly world of Asiya, nepishy machine that's already at work. Okay, when you eat something, let's say you eat a piece of bread. Okay, That bread was made from wheat or a plant. And that plant grew out of the ground and was nourished with water and nutrients and minerals and things. But what that plant, what we're eating of that plant, is usually what has grown because of the influence of the sun. So the sunlight goes into the plants, the photosynthesis of the plants converts sunlight into food. And if you eat meat, the food is eaten by the animal, and you eat the animal. If you're a vegetarian, or you take the sunlight that's just one generation removed from the face of the freaking sun, and you eat it, and it nourishes you. Okay. And your body takes care of it all by itself. You don't have to micromanage it. Okay. Your body is already doing the magical work. So if you could get it into your mind that what you're eating is God, then your body automatically, without you even worrying about it or thinking about it, is saying, I'm turning this into myself. I'm turning this into my own vehicle here. If you ate nothing but God, sooner or later, what is it, 7 years? Your whole body turns into God. Okay. It's a remarkable, natural, religious act. Now, don't get me started on the procreative act, because that too is a natural creative act. Okay, and then you get into the dynamics of you being the sun itself. Okay, but we won't go there today. Just want to talk about the Eucharist in Magic and Theory and Practice, or Book 4, Part 3. Crowley says in Chapter 20, the Eucharist and the art of alchemy. One of the simplest and most complete magical ceremonies is the Eucharist. It consists of taking common things, transmuting them into things divine, and then consuming them. So far, it's the type of every magical ceremony, like even that initiatory ceremony that Consummata Mass. For the reabsorption of the force is a kind of consumption, but it has a more restricted application as follows. Take a substance, symbolic of the whole course of nature, make it God, and consume it. There are many ways of doing this, but they may be easily classified according to the number of elements of which the sacrament is composed. This is the highest form of the Eucharist, is that in which the element consecrated is one. It is one substance, not two, not living, not dead, neither liquid nor solid, neither hot nor cold, neither male nor female. Oh, and he says, and of course he teases us, saying this sacrament is secret in every respect. But then he goes on to describe something that's more recognizable to us. The Eucharist of two elements has its matter of the passives, the wafer or the host or the pantacle is of corn, typical of earth. Corn also means, wheat. And wine, a cup, it represents water. There's certain other attributions. The wafer is the sun, for instance, and the wine is appropriate to Bacchus. Okay, Bacchus who drinks the sun. I bring ye wine from above, from the vats of the storied sun. Okay. Uh, let's see. This is used, the actives and passives, this is used in the exoteric Mass of the Phoenix, or Liber 333, chapter 44. That 333 is the Book of Lies. Okay. Chapter 44 is the Mass of the Phoenix. Is mixed with the blood of the Magus. This Mass should be performed daily at sunset by every magician. What are you doing at sunset tonight? Okay. Corn and wine are the equivalent to flesh and blood, but it is easier to convert live substances into the body and blood of God than to perform this miracle upon dead matter. So in other words, you could do Eucharist on anything that you absorb, even if it's in the most indirect and allegorical manner. But it is easier to convert live substances because your body is used to handling. You set the machinery of your body in motion if it's live substances. The Eucharist of three elements has for its basis the symbols of the three gunas. For tamas, or darkness, take opium or nightshade or some sleepy medicine. For rajas, activity, take strychnine or other excitant. Yeah, right. For sattvas, calm, the cakes of light may again be suitable. The Eucharist of four elements consists of fire, air, water, and earth. These are represented by a flame for fire, by incense or roses for air, by wine for water, and by bread and salt for earth. Now, those of us who are familiar with the ceremonies of the Golden Dawn will recognize the closing ceremony of a very particular basic early ritual. Now, on the altar, and everybody takes part in this. Okay, everybody takes part in this ritual. One by one, they come up to the altar. And there's a cross and a triangle on the altar, and there's a red rose, and there's a red lamp, and there's a cup of wine, and there's a paten, or a plate, of bread and salt. And the Hierophant says, "Nothing now remains but to partake together in silence of the mystic repast, composed of the symbols of the four elements, and to remember our pledge of secrecy." He goes to the west of the altar, facing east, gives the saluting sign, but not the sign of silence. So he goes to the west and go. Okay. He takes up the rose and says, "I invite you to inhale with me the perfume of this rose as a symbol of air." And he smells the rose. Now, after you've gone through an entire wonderful, inspiring, awesome ceremony, okay, you're in an altered state of consciousness by the time you're doing this. You're blissed out, okay? You're magically, ritually, ceremonially blissed out. And by the time you smell that rose, you're smelling the rose of paradise. So he invited them to smell the rose, to feel with me the warmth of this sacred fire. And he spreads your hand. He spreads his hands over the fire. And everybody does this one by one after him. And to eat with me this bread and salt as types of earth. Dips his bread in the salt and eats. And finally, to drink with me this wine, the consecrated emblem of elemental water. He makes a cross with the cup and drinks. The Hierophant puts down the cup between the cross and triangle. He comes to the east of the altar, faces west, and then one by one, first the officers come and do that same thing. And the person that's taking communion then takes the place. And the Hierophant withdraws. Okay. And that chain continues throughout the whole thing. And the people that take the Eucharist early, you think will have to stand around and wait for 30 people to do the same thing. But it's a privilege. It's a glorious privilege because you can stand in silence after you take your Eucharist and just absorb it and feel it coursing through every pore of your skin and every vein. You take it like a drug, okay, and it acts like a drug. And the last person on receiving the cup drains it and inverts it and says, Cobs. And the Hierophant says, and the hegemon says, Pect. And the Hierophant knocks, Conks. Hegemon knocks, Hierophant knocks, Pax. Hegemon knocks, Light. Hierophant knocks, In. The Hierophant knocks, In. And the Hierophant knocks, Extension. And they all make both sides toward the altar. The Hierophant says, May what we have partaken maintain us in our search for the quintessence, the stone of the philosophers, true wisdom, perfect happiness, the summum bonum. Okay, and everybody exits at that point. Isn't that cool? Now, in the Gnostic Mass, the Thelemic Gnostic Mass, the priest and priestess, in a sense, start off by being the four elements at the very beginning, okay? The priestess draws her sword to get the priest out of the tomb. Now, the priest at the moment is that like sleeping beauty of Hey Final. Yeah, his office may be priest, but he is the princess in the fairy tale story. And it's the priestess that draws her ruach sword to get the dead priest out of the tomb. So the ruach, by the power of the ruach, by the power of the mind, she awakens the body. And they too, in the course of the Gnostic Mass, and they too will eventually unite at the high altar to become He and Yod rather than He and Vav, I hope if I'm making sense. And when they do that, when they've united together, they've consecrated the Eucharist of two elements. And the eating of those two elements turns it into one element. And in the language of biology, the four turn themselves into two. The two unite to form a baby. The baby is the host and wine. And that's where all this baby eating nonsense comes from on Christian television. And then you eat the baby and become the one. Okay. In my mouth be the essence of the life of the sun. Okay. Not the sun, the essence of the life of the sun. Take the cup. In my mouth be the essence of the joy of the earth, not the earth, the essence of the joy of the earth. And that goes into, you've made them one. It's the sun with an earth chaser. Okay. And then you turn and communicate this great oneness that is exploding in you. There is no part of me that is not of the gods. Okay. But now he mentions the Mass of the Phoenix, and this is something that he said, of course, should be done by a magician of any grade every day. And it's usually, although it's not stated in the ritual, it's assumed that it's being done at sunset. The magician, his breast bare, stands before an altar on which are a burin, or a gouging tool, a bell, a thurible, and two of the cakes of light. In the sign of the Enterer, he reaches across the altar and cries, "Hail, Ra, that goest in thy bark into the caverns of the dark." In other words, the sun is going down. He gives a sign of silence, takes the bell and fire in his hands. "East of the altar see me stand, with light and music in mine hand." He strikes 11 times on the bell, and that's 353 each time. And he places the fire in the thurible. "I strike the bell, I light the flame, I utter the mysterious name, Abrahadabra." Now that abrahadabra is the bringing together of the microcosm and the macrocosm. Okay, just like the host and wine are being mixed together into one thing. Abrahadabra is that joining of the macrocosm and the microcosm. Strikes 11 more times on the bell. "Now I begin to pray. Thou child, holy thy name and undefiled, thy reign is come, thy will is done. Here is the bread, here is the blood. Bring me through midnight to the sun. Save me from evil and from good, beyond duality. That thy one crown, Kether, of all the 10, even now and here be mine. Amen." He puts the first cake on the thurible, on the fire of the thurible. "I burn the incense cake, proclaim these adorations of thy name." Now there's 4 adorations that found in the book of the law. It says he makes them as in Liber Legis. It makes the adorations. Uh, but those are the verse sections, which are translations from the Stele of Revealing. Unity uttermost showed, I adore the might of thy breath, supreme and terrible God, who makest the gods and death to tremble before thee. I adore thee. Appear on the throne of Ra. Open the ways of the Ku. Lighten the ways of the Ka. The ways of the Kabs runs through to stir me or still me. Aum, let it kill me. The light is mine, its rays consume me. I have made a secret door in the house of Ra and tomb of Kephra and Ahithor. I am thy Theban, O Mentu, the prophet Ankaf Nakansu. By best Namaut my breast I beat, by wise Tanich I weave my spell. Show thy star splendor, O Nuit. Bid me within thine house to dwell. O winged snake of light, Hadit, abide with me, Rahur Kuit. And all this is being done as the sun is disappearing over the horizon right in front of you. After he does those adoration, he takes the burin, or a sharp thing, and makes upon his breast the proper sign. Behold this bleeding breast of mine, gashed with the sacramental sign. Now, if you press hard enough, a little bit of blood will rise to the surface of the skin. No more than that is needed. As a matter of fact, not even that is needed if your magical will is drawing blood to the surface. But if there is one little drop that rises to the surface, like when you accidentally scratch yourself on a twig or something like that, that blood comes to the surface in its deep, deep redness. And if you're lucky, and if you've got your altar set up right, the last rays of the sun is bathing your breast and is penetrating that drop of blood. The sun goes out and you've trapped it in the living blood. And you put the second cake of light, like a Band-Aid, on that wound. And say, I staunch the blood, and the wafer soaks it up. And the high priest invokes. And then very, very mindfully, because if your mind is on it at this point, if your full concentration is zoomed in and focused on that living cake of light, you consume it. And when you come to your senses, you say, this bread I eat, this oath I swear, as I inflame myself with prayer. There is no grace. There is no guilt. This is the law. Do what thou wilt. He strikes 11 more times on the bell. And as that last ring of the bell, 353, as it fades away, he says, Abrahadabra. I entered in with woe, with mirth. I now go forth and with thanksgiving to do my pleasure on the earth among the legions of the living. He goeth forth. And thanksgiving is another interpretation of the word Eucharist, by the way. Anyway, that's our Eucharist talk. Tomorrow will be Saturday morning cartoons, and I hope you'll be able to stay with us. And if all goes well on Sunday, Constance and I will do a little polemic, ecumenical discussion of what Pentecost might mean to all of us. Until then, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.